Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. If you have already seen our quarterback and running back sleeper videos, then you know that it is that time of year. It is August, and that means it is time to prepare for the fantasy draft. So, in this episode today, we are talking about the sleeper wide receivers that you should look out for during your draft. But before we get into that, make sure you subscribe down below and also hit that like button if you like this video. Also, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when we create new content. Ryan, today we're talking about receivers, and man, this was kind of tough because the receiving class is deep. It is very deep. You can find value at a lot of places, and so trying to pick certain guys was tough. But I think that we did a good job with our research, and I'm very curious to hear who your number one guy is.
So my number one guy, we're going to take it back to Atlanta. If you haven't watched the running back video, I said Mike Davis was one of the probably biggest running back sleepers in this draft just because of his dual threat ability in the Atlanta offense. But another guy in Atlanta that I feel like is being slept on is Calvin Ridley. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Calvin Ridley is a clear wide receiver one. And you're right, he is. But did you know right now his average ADP is at the top of the third round in a 10-team fantasy league?
Really?
Yeah.
That seems wrong. I feel like he's gone by then.
Yeah. So pick 21 is his ADP. He finished as wide receiver 4 last year. Interesting stat. He was 5th in yards per receptions among wide receivers with 50 or more catches last year. So if he had 90 catches last year, 15.3 yards, 9 touchdowns, in a offense with Julio Jones, who was still the number one wide receiver, even though he only played 8 to 10 games. Just imagine what he's going to do this season if he can even average that same amount. So I think he's a clear-cut wide receiver one. I have him at the top of the second round as where I would take a guy like him just because he's the clear-cut number one wide receiver. They're going to want to throw it and kind of diversify the offense to keep defenses on their toes. And so I think top of the third round is insane for a guy that's been a top 5 fantasy wide receiver the last 2 seasons. So
yeah, well, especially I'm very curious to hear what people think about Calvin Ridley being considered a sleeper. But that is a fair point. If he's dropping all the way down to the third round in a 10-team league, I'm very curious to see who is being taken ahead of him. I mean, the running back is probably the most shallow of all of the based off value per pick. But even still, Calvin Ridley dropping all the way down to the third round. Someone had 20 picks being taken before him. I'm very curious to see what some people's logic might be for not wanting to take Calvin Ridley. If he's sitting there and Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams is gone. Same with DeAndre Hopkins, and you don't want to take Calvin Ridley. That'd be very hard to pass up. And I might be a little biased as a Falcons fan, but yeah, I think Calvin Ridley's going to have a great year, especially now that they have Kyle Pitts, who hopefully stays healthy. And can help add some pressure. But with my number one guy, it's going to be it's interesting I'm doing this because I try to actually avoid rookies in my fantasy draft. But I don't think I could pass up on this opportunity, though, to talk about the potential that JaMarr Chase has with having just an absolute stellar breakout season this year. Obviously, we all know the history of him and Joe Burrow and what they were able to do when Joe Burrow was still at LSU in 2019. And he's already coming into a very successful receiving core. He's only going to add that depth. And now that he has the timing, he has the relationship with Joe Burrow that has already been established. There have been a lot of great reports about him coming out. It's going to be one of those where I think if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I think he can easily throw for 4,000 yards and probably divided amongst those 3 receivers. It's very possible. I think we could see all 3 of them being over 1,000-yard receivers just because they're all so athletic, especially JaMarr Chase. I think he's going to have a lot of touchdowns this year. I think he's going to be very active. They're going to need him to be because they're going to need to put up a lot of points because the defense is going to give up a lot of points. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to catch a lot of passes, get a lot of
Yeah.
yards after the catch, and I see a lot of end zone celebrations,
Yeah.
some potential penalties as well. So, but yeah, I think JaMarr Chase is definitely one to keep an eye on. It's very interesting to see where people rank him, because I think it kind of varies based off just personal preference. As I said,
Yeah.
I would rate him lower down the totem pole just because he is a rookie, seeing how he would adapt to the NFL with no NFL data behind him.
Yeah.
So, but like if he's sitting there in the 8th round and I'm just looking at my team, uh, um, just
Yeah.
just evaluating it, it'd be hard to pass up JaMarr Chase and potentially even have him in the flex
Mhm.
role. Then they could potentially be promoted up into receiver 2, potentially for receiver
Yeah.
1.
One of the things too that I think is going to bode well for JaMarr Chase is the fact that on that 2019 LSU team, he was a clear cut, like clearly better than Justin Jefferson, who was one of the best rookie wide receivers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he's going to get to go to Cincinnati with Joe Burrow as well, I think is just
Mm-hmm.
it's a icing on the cake. So
Well, and it's going to help with both Jefferson and now with JaMarr Chase. They have I mean, I think Dalvin Cook's better than Joe Mixon, but still an established running game, which
yeah,
opens up all the passing game. And
yeah,
Joe Burrow and JaMarr Chase uh, did a lot of play action with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that 2019 season, and they were very successful with it. And so if they can utilize that play action to get JaMarr Chase open, and I think he can. We'll be seeing a lot of action with his new and former teammate.
yeah. No, definitely. I do want to go on to my next pick here, which I'm going to go back to the NFC South, down to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I am going to say Antonio Brown is probably the best value pick at wide receiver
Mm-hmm.
in 2021. I say that because right now his average ADP is pick 102, so top of the 11th round. And if you take his averages from last season and project it across the entire season, the entire 16 game season, not even 17 games, he would have had 90 receptions, 970 yards and 8 touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
which is a top end wide receiver too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people remember, but the first 2 games that he played in Tampa, I think he had a total of 3 receptions.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think him and Tom Brady, for some reason, have a bond that uh, they just like each other. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to get open. And I know that Tampa Bay has a loaded room of just overall pass catchers. They have 3 top tight ends, now 3 top wide receivers, and that doesn't even include Scotty Miller. So I think if you're going to take one of the Tampa Bay wide receivers, I think Antonio Brown is the guy because you have very little risk, in my opinion, taking him in the 11th round. And the reward could be a top end wide receiver too.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the guys that I really like coming out of Tampa that I think could really be a sleeper and surprise a lot of people this season.
Well, and that's. Did you mention the average points that he had per game last year?
I just had his average stats.
So I broke it all down, and this is how I'm doing my research. But per game, so he only played in 8 games last year, but per game he was ranked 21st in a PPR league specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
1 point per reception. He ranked 21st overall in receivers, averaging. Where is it here? 14 and a half points per game. I mean, that's going to be a great option, a great value, as you said, if you get him in the 11th round. Put him in the flex as well, or if one of your receivers is on bye, sliding him in there, or potentially even starting him on a weekly basis. So that's going to be great value, as you said, just with how athletic he is, and the offensive system that they have down in Tampa fits really well with him. So
yeah.
My final pick, and I guess be cheating a little bit here. I'm doing 2 guys at once, and I'm also going to be doing it with the same team that I have already mentioned with. But just when looking at this and just seeing at the potential that, where are they at here? Oh, sorry, need my list here. But the potential that, Here they are. That Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins have. Both were nearly 1,000-yard receivers. Well, Tyler Boyd had 850 yards last year with 79 catches, and T. Higgins had a little over 900 yards with 67 catches. That was without Joe Burrow for a good third of the season. The whole team was just kind of in shambles, it felt like, but they were still able to produce that much. Now they have a better offensive line. Joe Mixon's back healthy. Joe Burrow is back healthy. You've added JaMarr Chase now to this set of skill position players, and it's only going to create more opportunity for these guys. It's going to be something similar to what you were just saying and how I envision it, with something with Antonio Brown and the offense that they have down in Tampa. You have so many receiver weapons that the defense it'll be impossible for them to guard all of these guys, and they're so gifted athletically that they'll be able to get open, and it's going to be a great offensive system for these guys. I could honestly see then combining this with JaMarr Chase. I think I said this already, but potentially see 3 1,000-yard receivers, because I think Joe Burrow with the 17 games now, I think he can easily get over 4,000, probably even 4,500 yards, which how much he is throwing the ball. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was on pace to having in the low 4,000s before he tore his ACL last year to begin with. So when looking at these guys, and if you're sitting there in the 6th, 7th, 8th round and you're trying to find a guy to maybe put in the flex or add some depth, and you're already solid with the receivers that you got, adding these guys, because all these guys are receiver ones. It's like receiver one for the team. It's like receiver 1A, B, and C. There's not really a clear difference between the three guys.
They have different roles. I feel like if you're in a PPR league, you may want to lean towards Tyler Boyd just because he had almost 90 receptions. But if you're not in a PPR league, catch up with the times. No, I'm just kidding. But if you're not in a PPR league, then a guy like T. Higgins may present a later round value just because he's not going to get 8-10 catches a game, but he's going to get 3 or 4 20-yard catches. And so for me, that's kind of the difference between the two guys, and kind of just trying to find the right fit for you.
It's going to be interesting and fun to watch the Cincinnati Bengals team, but also then from a fantasy perspective as well. These guys are going to be explosive, and it's going to be a great trio of receivers to watch. And hopefully they're on your fantasy team, because I think they're all going to do really well.
And lastly, I just want to say one more guy that I kind of feel like you okay?
Sorry about that. Yep, all good. Yeah.
Lastly, I just want to say one more guy that I feel like is going to be maybe for some of those 12-team leagues, or a guy to maybe think about picking up in like free agency after weeks 1 or 2, is going to be Nelson Agholor with the Patriots. So right now his ADP is 190, which puts him way out of any 10-team draft. But if you look at New England's receiver roster, they don't, kind of like the Bengals, have a very clear-cut wide receiver 1. And I think Nelson Agholor is going to get a lot of down the field catches. Just kind of, he's a speedster and he beats teams deep. But I think New England is going to be looking to throw the ball a lot more, and they do have more weapons than they have last year. And so I feel like Nelson Agholor is kind of a guy to keep an eye on later in drafts. Maybe if you want to draft him in like one of the last 2 rounds, or just keep an eye on him in free agency. That's something that I would look at. In 2020, he had 50 catches for about 900 yards. He averaged 19 yards a reception, and he had 8 touchdowns.
Wow.
And so that's kind of a thing that I don't think a lot of people know about, is just the fact that he is producing down the field, and he has for most of his career. His biggest concern isn't actually him, it's just the quarterbacks in New England. But I think that he's going to get the opportunities to make plays, and I think we'll be able to really see how well he translates from the Oakland Raiders offense to the New England offense after weeks 1 and 2. And I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Tracy Take. Thank you guys for making it this far. If you have not already, go ahead and like and subscribe. And if we missed any receivers that you think are going to be sleepers in this year's fantasy draft, go ahead and let us know in the comments. And happy drafting, guys.